What does true progress in Buddhist practice look like? Have you ever looked at your life and asked, am I really growing, not just in age, not just in knowledge, but truly, inwardly, in the silence of your mind? In the way your heart responds to pain? In how you treat the people who disappoint you? This is the story of someone who asked that same question. His name was Ananda, not the famous disciple of the Buddha, but an ordinary man. Just like you and me, he was successful on the outside, a respected teacher. A calm demeanor. A quiet smile, but inside, he was restless. He had been meditating every day, chanting sutras. Attending retreats, he read the words of the Buddha over and over, but something inside whispered, "You're doing everything right." But something is still missing. He wasn't sure if he was truly changing, or just decorating his ego in spiritual robes. One night, sitting by the candlelight, he wrote in his journal, "Is all this practice making me a better person? Or just a better actor?" That question hit him hard, because the truth is, we can look spiritual, we can talk about Dharma, but unless the mind becomes lighter, unless our anger softens, unless we respond to pain with more wisdom than we did yesterday, we might be moving, but we're not progressing. And so, Ananda left the comforts of routine. He left behind the praises, the applause, the comfort of looking spiritual, and went on a journey, not across lands, but into himself. He sought out silence. He lived in monasteries, among strangers. He worked as a farmer, a dishwasher, even a night guard. Why? Because he wanted to find the real sign of progress, not in achievements, not in certificates, but in his own heart. Years later, someone asked him, "What did you find?" He smiled, paused for a long moment, and said, "I found that the more I stopped trying to appear holy, the more I started becoming whole." This story isn't just about Ananda, it's about all of us. Anyone who's ever wondered, how do I know if I'm truly progressing on the path of awakening? In the chapters ahead, we'll explore the answer to this question, not through theory, but through reflection, real life, and timeless Buddhist wisdom. So, stay close, because sometimes, the most important journey isn't the one the world can see, but the one where only you know you're walking it. You meditate every morning, you recite mantras with perfect pronunciation, you've attended 10 retreats, read 20 books, and can quote the Buddha word for word, but pause, ask yourself this simple, unsettling question: have I truly changed? Or just polished my image? This is where many seekers stumble. They confuse the ritual for the real, the outer practices for inner progress. You see, it's easy to look spiritual, wearing robes, lighting incense, bowing before altars. These can be beautiful expressions of reverence, but without inner clarity, they can also become just performances. We can chant with our lips, while still cursing people in our hearts. We can sit still in meditation, while our ego dances wildly in silence. The form becomes a mask, and slowly, without knowing it, we fall in love with the idea of being spiritual, rather than becoming truly awake. The Buddha warned about this. He never asked for blind devotion to rituals. He asked for transformation. He spoke of the Eightfold Path, not as rules to follow, but as tools to free the mind from suffering. Let me tell you a story. There once was a monk named Sona. He practiced with intensity, pushing himself to the edge of exhaustion, but progress eluded him. So he approached the Buddha and said, "Why am I not awakening, Lord? I try harder than anyone." The Buddha asked, "Sona, you used to play the lute, didn't you?" "Yes, Master." "What happens when the string is too tight? It snaps. And when it's too loose, it makes no sound." "Exactly," said the Buddha. "The path is the same. Not too tight, not too loose. Find the middle way." You see, even effort can become ego, even discipline can be driven by pride. Spiritual progress is not about doing more, it's about becoming less entangled, less reactive, less attached, less self-centered. It's not about how long you sit, but whether you stand back up with more compassion, not about how many chants you memorize, but whether your mind chants kindness in moments of anger. So the next time you find yourself thinking, "I'm a good practitioner because I've done so much," stop, and instead, ask, "Am I kinder than I was a year ago?" Do I understand my suffering more clearly? Am I reacting with more wisdom and less blame? Because that's the real progress, and it rarely looks grand. It doesn't always feel like enlightenment. Often, it feels like small moments of clarity in the middle of your worst days, moments when you breathe instead of explode, moments when you listen instead of defend, moments when you forgive without needing an apology. That is awakening, unfolding in real time. Real progress on the spiritual path doesn't arrive like fireworks. It comes like morning light, quiet, gradual, gentle, but unmistakably powerful. You don't wake up one day suddenly enlightened. You notice that little by little, you're not the same person you used to be. Let's talk about what that really looks like. 1. You don't react. You reflect. Someone insults you. Last year, you would have snapped, sent a storm of words back, held that bitterness for days. But now, you pause, you feel the heat rise. But you don't feed the flame, you breathe, you watch, you let it pass. That's not weakness, that's mastery. That pause, that moment of space between trigger and reaction, is a sign that your mind is no longer a prisoner to impulse. It's freedom, in the subtlest form. 2. You blame less and understand more. You used to blame others for your suffering. My boss is toxic. My parents ruined my childhood. My partner doesn't get me. But now, you begin to see, these situations didn't create your pain, they revealed it. You stop shouting at the mirror, and start looking at the face within it. You understand that your reactions are shaped by your conditioning, your fears, your unhealed wounds, so you stop playing the victim, you become the healer instead. 3. You speak less and listen more. There's a softness in your voice now. You don't rush to correct people, you don't try to win every debate. You realize being right is not the same as being kind. You listen, not just to respond, but to understand. And in that quiet space, others feel safe with you, not because you have answers, but because you offer presence. That, too, is progress. 4. You notice beauty. Even in pain. One day, you're sitting in traffic, it's raining. You're late, but instead of stewing in frustration, you notice the raindrops on the windshield. You watch a mother holding her child on the sidewalk. You feel peace. The moment hasn't changed. You realize that even in chaos, there is still something beautiful, something sacred, something to be grateful for. That shift in perception is the fruit of deep spiritual work. 5. You judge less and love more. You used to divide the world, right versus wrong, good versus bad, spiritual versus ignorant. But now, you see the messiness in everyone, and the light in everyone too. You stop measuring who deserves compassion, you just offer it, because you've tasted your own darkness, and you know, we are all learning, we are all hurting, we are all trying to come home. And when you live from that place, that's not just spiritual maturity, that's awakening. So, if you've ever wondered, am I really growing? Don't look for the dramatic, look for the gentle revolutions inside you. Are you more patient, more forgiving, more honest with yourself? If yes, then you are walking the path. You are blooming, quietly, like a lotus in the mud, and no one may see it, but you will feel it, and that is more than enough. There comes a moment on the path, when your greatest growth is no longer loud. It's not in how many teachings you share, not in how often you speak about the Dharma, not in how spiritual you sound. It's in your silence, not the silence of avoidance, but the silence of depth, the kind of silence that listens, before speaking, that watches, before judging, that feels, before reacting. This silence doesn't mean absence, it means presence. Still water reflects the moon. In the ancient Zen tradition, it said, only a still mind reflects reality like a clear lake reflects the moon. If your thoughts are turbulent, even the most beautiful truths will appear distorted. But when your mind settles, when the chatter fades, when there's nothing left to prove, you begin to see, you see the causes of suffering, you see the habitual patterns that used to control you, you see how the ego tries to hide. Even in your practice, And in that moment, there's no need to argue, compare, or even explain. The truth reveals itself in the stillness. The most evolved souls speak less and mean more. Have you ever met someone who didn't say much, but when they did, every word felt like a bell ringing in your chest? That's the power of inner maturity. They don't need to impress. They don't rush to give advice. They don't offer opinions from a shallow mind. They've sat with themselves. They've tasted their own shadows. They've made peace with discomfort. So now, when they speak, their words carry the weight of silence. It's the difference between speaking from memory and speaking from experience, learning to hold, not just fix. In the early days of practice, we want to fix everything. Every problem must have a solution. Every emotion must be dealt with. Every discomfort must be overcome. But maturity whispers something different. Can you just hold it? Can you sit with pain without rushing to numb it? Can you hold grief like a child, instead of pushing it away? Can you let someone suffer without trying to control their path? This holding, this sacred allowing, requires stillness, and it's in that quiet space that healing begins to bloom, not because you fixed anything, but because you stopped running from it. Real presence is wordless. There are moments in life where no words are needed, sitting with a dying loved one, looking into the eyes of someone who's been broken, walking in nature after heartbreak. In these moments, words fail, but presence does not. The mature practitioner knows, you don't need to say, I understand. You simply be there, fully, gently, without judgment, and in that silence, you become the refuge. So, if lately, you find yourself speaking less, arguing less, seeking approval less, don't worry, you're not fading, you're rooting, like a tree in still soil. Like a bell that only rings when struck with meaning, you're discovering the kind of strength that doesn't need noise to prove its power, and that, dear friend, is how silence begins to speak louder than 1,000 teachings. There's a quiet transformation that happens when your spiritual path is no longer confined to the cushion, the temple, or the scriptures. It begins to show, in the way you move, in the way you look at someone, in the way you simply are, not because you preach, not because you label yourself a practitioner, but because your energy teaches. Without saying a word, the peace you cultivate becomes the peace you radiate. People can feel it, the stillness in your presence, the gentleness in your gaze, the patience in your voice. It's not something you force, it's not something you try to perform, it's the natural fragrance of a mind that no longer needs to be right, no longer needs to control, no longer needs to be noticed. Like a tree standing tall, rooted and calm, you begin to offer shade to those burning in their own chaos. Your reactions speak louder than your words. You walk into a tense meeting. People are anxious, irritable, talking over each other. But you breathe. You listen. You speak slowly. You don't take things personally. You don't fight the fire. You cool it, without effort. That's real influence, not by position, not by persuasion, but by presence. A trained mind becomes like cool water. It doesn't need to dominate the flame, it simply soothes it. Daily choices become acts of practice. Every decision becomes a mirror of your inner work. You buy less, not because you can't afford it, but because you understand the nature of craving. You eat slowly, not because of a diet, but because you're practicing gratitude with every bite. You speak kindly, not to impress, but because you know the pain of harshness. Suddenly, daily life becomes a field of mindfulness, not separate from your practice, but an expression of it. Washing dishes, waiting in traffic, replying to messages, all of it becomes your temple, and that's when you know, you're not practicing Buddhism, you're living it. Relationships become your greatest teachers. Before, you might have avoided difficult people, now, you see them as mirrors, revealing where you still hold impatience, pride, fear. Before, you might have argued to defend your views, now, you observe where the need to be right arises. Before, you saw love as attachment, now, you begin to taste love without possession. You realize, a romantic partner, a rude stranger, a crying child, all are invitations to grow, all are part of the path. The Buddha taught, if you think you're enlightened, go spend a week with your family. Why? Because that's where the ego hides best, and that's where the deepest transformations begin. People will start to feel safe around you, not because you give advice, not because you fix their lives, but because your presence makes them feel seen, heard, held, not judged. They may not understand why, but when they're around you, they breathe deeper, they soften, they feel safe, and that's when you know you've become a refuge, not a preacher, not a savior, just a presence that reminds people of their own stillness. So how do you know you're progressing? Look at your life, not the grand moments, but the ordinary ones, how you hold space for others, how you speak when no one's watching, how you show up in the messy, the mundane, the monotonous. That's where the light of practice shines brightest. Sometimes, the moment you think you're falling apart, is the exact moment you're breaking through. We rarely talk about this. In books and talks, practice seems peaceful, graceful, almost effortless. But in truth, the path is not always light. Sometimes, it's a dark night, long, lonely, confusing, where nothing makes sense anymore. You don't feel spiritual. You don't feel kind. You don't feel awakened. You feel lost, angry, disconnected, empty. And here's the truth most won't say, that's not a sign you're failing, that's a sign you're awakening. When the old you begins to die, imagine a snake shedding its skin. It doesn't look elegant, it rubs against rocks. It twists. It struggles. Why? Because transformation isn't soft, it's uncomfortable, even painful. The same happens when your ego begins to loosen its grip. The illusions you've carried for years start to crack, and what cracks hurts, but the pain isn't punishment, it's purification. The fear isn't regression, it's resistance. You're not going backward, you're letting go, and sometimes, letting go feels like losing everything, but in truth, you're just losing who you're not. The fire that refines. In Buddhist teaching, there's a beautiful metaphor. The lotus grows from the mud, not despite the mud, but because of it. Your pain, your heartbreak, your confusion, are not blocks to awakening, they're fuel. Fire doesn't just destroy, it refines. It burns away false identities, attachments, and stories that no longer serve, and though it hurts, what emerges from the fire is cleaner, clearer, truer. That's the alchemy of suffering. You begin to question everything. There comes a point when nothing external satisfies. You sit on your cushion, and there's no bliss. You hear Dharma talks, and they sound hollow. You do your rituals, and feel numb. You think, am I doing something wrong? No, you're growing beyond inspiration, into integration. You're not chasing spiritual highs anymore, you're facing your lows. And in this discomfort, the real work begins. This is not the end of your path, it's the deepening of it. You are being emptied, so you can be filled. Like a teacup full of dirty water, the universe begins pouring it out. All that was hidden, old wounds, buried anger, forgotten grief, rises to the surface. You cry for no reason, you feel tired all the time, you feel like giving up, but this is not collapse, it's cleansing. You are being emptied, so something more spacious can move in, compassion. Clarity, peace that's no longer dependent on circumstances. You are not losing your mind, you are losing your false self. Even the Buddha faced this night. Before his enlightenment, the Buddha sat under the Bodhi tree, and was attacked by every inner demon, fear, desire, doubt. They weren't distractions, they were the gatekeepers, and the only way forward was through. He didn't avoid them, he faced them, he saw them, and didn't run, and when dawn came, he was free. So if you're hurting, if your practice feels empty, if your nights feel darker than ever, don't give up. You're not broken. You're being remade, you're not failing, you're awakening. And remember, the deepest peace comes after the greatest storms. So keep walking, even if it's through the dark, even if you don't know where it leads, because the path doesn't always shine, but it always transforms. And here we are, at the end of the path, or perhaps, it's better to say, at the beginning of something new, because the true signs of progress, the most beautiful manifestations of growth, are not loud, not flashy, not dramatic. They're quiet, soft, unmistakably peaceful. The joy you've been searching for, it wasn't somewhere out there, it was always within you. Joy without a reason. At some point in your practice, you stop waiting for the next external thing to give you happiness. You no longer seek a perfect job, a perfect relationship, a perfect moment. You stop looking outside, and you begin to realize, joy doesn't need a reason, it arises spontaneously. Like a flower blooming without anyone planting the seed, in every smile, in every breath, in every moment of presence. It's not about everything going right, it's about how you are when things don't go right. It's about the peace that remains untouched by the storm, the subtlety of peace. There's a quiet, almost unnoticeable peace that begins to settle in. It's not the peace of the absence of trouble. It's the peace of knowing that you don't need to control everything anymore. You don't need to manipulate situations, you don't need to judge others, you don't need to win every argument, you don't even need to prove anything to anyone, you simply are, and in that being, there's a contentment that nothing can disturb. This peace isn't loud, it doesn't demand attention, it's just the steady rhythm of your heart, beating in harmony with the universe, living without attachments. When you reach this level of inner joy, you stop clinging to things, you stop holding on to past pains, past loves, past identities. You let things come and go, and when they go, you don't grasp, you don't need to own anything, you don't need to accumulate anything. You see life as it is, a series of moments that arise, that exist, and that eventually fade away, and yet, in that fading, there's an unshakable joy, a joy that doesn't depend on the external world. It's the joy of knowing who you truly are. Others feel your light. As your inner joy blossoms, something miraculous happens. Others start to feel it. You don't have to say anything. You don't have to preach. You don't even have to do anything special. Your presence becomes a kind of refuge, a safe space where others can simply be, where they can feel seen, heard, and held. People come to you with their problems, and without you trying to fix them, they leave lighter, more at peace, more connected, because joy isn't something you teach, it's something you live. And through that living, you become a beacon of light for those still searching in the dark. The path never ends, it only deepens. You've traveled far, you've faced challenges, you've fallen, and you've risen, you've questioned, and you've let go, and through it all, you've found something that no external achievement can ever give you, a peace that's within, a joy that doesn't depend on anything, a freedom that cannot be taken away. But remember, the path never ends, it only deepens, because now, it's not about seeking anything outside of yourself, it's about living your truth, and sharing that truth with the world. The journey continues, but now, every step is a dance. Not a struggle, every moment is a song, not a battle. If you've enjoyed this journey, if you felt this light within you, please take a moment to like, share, and subscribe to the channel. Let's walk this path together, let's continue to grow, let's continue to bloom. Click the bell to stay connected and never miss a new insight. May peace, joy, and wisdom always be with you. Thank you for being here, and remember, the true journey begins the moment you choose to be present.